When the river burst its banks that April morning, the town of Willow Creek fell silent, not because the storm had passed, but because everyone was too busy counting what they had left. Among the scattered fences and drowned fields stood Eleanor Briggs, a 62-year-old widow who had lived alone since her husband, Tom, passed away 6 winters ago. Their small farmhouse sat on a hill, overlooking what used to be a garden full of life. Carrots, lettuce, daisies. Now, it was a swamp of mud and broken roots. Eleanor had stopped planting after Tom's death. The garden, like her heart, had gone quiet. But nature has a strange way of sneaking back in when you least expect it. It was just before sunrise when she heard it. A faint cry, like a whimper muffled by the wind. At first, she thought it was the sound of a bird trapped somewhere. Then it came again, sharper, desperate. It was coming from the old willow tree near the stream. Grabbing her flashlight and an old raincoat, Eleanor stepped outside. The air smelled of wet soil and loss. Her boots sank with every step until she reached the willow. The water was still rising. There, half submerged in mud and trembling beneath a pile of branches, was a small white rabbit. Its fur, once probably soft and bright, was now caked with dirt. One ear was torn, and its tiny chest rose and fell in quick, frightened bursts. The rabbit looked up at her, eyes wide, terrified, but not wild. It was as if it knew her. For a moment, Eleanor froze. Something in her chest twisted, that same ache she'd buried for years. She thought of Tom, how he used to feed the wild rabbits near their garden, how he'd say, "You can tell a lot about the world by how it treats its smallest creatures." And now, here she was, face to face with one. The water was cold, biting through her jeans as Eleanor knelt down. She tried to move the branches, but they were tangled, heavy with soaked leaves. The rabbit struggled, squealing softly, but couldn't move. "Easy, sweetheart," she whispered. Her voice cracked. She hadn't called anything sweetheart in years. "I've got you." With trembling hands, she pulled at the branches until one sharp piece cut across her palm. She winced, but didn't stop. Inch by inch, she freed the rabbit, lifting it gently into her coat. It was shaking uncontrollably, its heart beating against her chest like a drum. She carried it inside, wrapping it in a towel by the fireplace. The rabbit didn't run, didn't bite, didn't even try to escape. It simply rested, eyes half closed, as if it had finally found safety. Eleanor stared at it for a long time, wondering why this tiny creature felt so familiar. Over the next few days, she nursed it back to health. She fed it lettuce, dried its fur, and made a small bed from an old showbox, lined with soft cloth. Each morning, it would sit near the window, watching the sunrise, its long ears twitching whenever she hummed. And every time she looked at it, she felt a warmth she hadn't known since Tom's laughter filled the house. Then one evening, while cleaning the kitchen, she found something that stopped her heart. A small wooden carving in a drawer. It was a rabbit. Tom had made it years ago, after a storm just like this one. When he'd rescued a baby rabbit from their flooded garden, he had said, "If one day I'm not around, and you see a rabbit near the willow, you'll know I'm still watching over you." Eleanor sat down, tears spilling for the first time in years. She looked across the room. The rabbit was sitting perfectly still, watching her. Its gaze wasn't fearful anymore. It was calm, deep, almost knowing. That night, she dreamt of Tom. He was standing under the willow tree, smiling, holding the same rabbit in his hands. He didn't say a word, just nodded toward her, the way he always did when words weren't needed. When she woke, the morning light was soft, golden, and the rabbit was gone. Eleanor ran outside, heart pounding. The ground was still wet, the grass glistening with dew. She searched everywhere, behind the barn, near the old fence, by the river. Then she saw it, the rabbit, sitting beneath the willow. The water had gone down, leaving a small patch of dry earth, like a tiny island. The rabbit looked up at her, motionless. She walked closer, afraid it might run away. But it didn't. Instead, it took a few small hops forward and stopped right in front of her boots. It lifted its head and pressed its nose against her hand. That simple gesture broke something inside her, or maybe it mended what had been broken too long. Tears filled her eyes as she knelt down. In that moment, everything she'd buried, the grief, the loneliness, the guilt for surviving, came rushing out. And yet, For the first time, it didn't hurt. It felt cleansing. The rabbit stood there for a few seconds more, then hopped away into the tall grass. Eleanor didn't chase it. She simply watched, smiling through her tears, as the small white shape disappeared into the morning mist. That evening, the sun dipped low behind the hills, casting golden light through the willow branches. Eleanor took the wooden carving from the drawer and placed it beneath the tree. She whispered, "Thank you, Tom. I remember now." Then she planted new seeds in her garden: carrots, lettuce, and daisies, the ones her husband used to grow. As she covered them with soil, a gentle wind stirred, and for a second, she thought she saw something white dart through the far end of the field. Maybe it was her imagination, maybe not. What mattered was this: she no longer felt alone. From that day on, every spring, a white rabbit appeared near the willow. It never came too close, never stayed too long, but it always arrived after the first rain, sitting just far enough that Eleanor could see it. And each time she did, she whispered the same words: "You're safe now. We both are."